good evening, everyone, where you are in the world. It's Wednesday today, and it's not Wednesday today, it's
Tuesday.
And we are back for a convo. This is Q1, and this week we are diving into the real reason why we're confident. So, before we start, I'd just like to introduce myself. I'm Anna, and I am and founder of the With Method and host of Women Motivation Group. And I help female go-getters in their 30s build unshakable confidence so they can limit potential. Oh, Joanna.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Davina. My name is Joanna Tonkin. I'm a registered psychotherapist and the founder of The Confidence Formula. I work with young adults to help them improve their confidence so that they can that's yours, so that they can be successful. Davina and I got together to create this for you because we are obsessed with all things personal development, and we strongly believe in the power of learning from one another.
And just to clarify, we are not perfect to be confident all the time. Like you, we move through our struggles and overcome obstacles and mindset to continuously improve. So just think of us as guides by your side.
Yeah. How funny that we've done this 21 times. So the fact that I'm saying your intro instead of my own, I think that's great.
I love that. I mean, you can introduce me. That's fine. I'll introduce you. Maybe next time. We'll swap. Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds great. So today, Davina and I want to talk about something that's really near and dear to our hearts, kind of the backbone of why we teach confidence. And like Davina said, the topic today is the real reason that you're not confident. Mm-hmm. And I always say, confident people were not born feeling confident. You know, even the ones you see walking around down the street with their head high and their shoulders rolled back and, you know, speaking fluidly and articulating themselves well, like those people were not born feeling confident. In fact, none of us were actually taught how to be confident, which is the beginning of the problem. In fact, the opposite is more true. You see, when we're born, age 0 to 7, we learn from blindly trusting and accepting our caregivers and what they tell us. From 8 to 13, we learn by copying and modeling other people. So there's so many instances and influences in our life where we are not connecting to ourselves. We are not listening to ourselves. We're not able to communicate what we need, and where other people are just calling the shots. Yeah. And that's why when we're 20, when we're 30, when we're 40, 50, 60, and life is happening, we feel like we're unable to make decisions. We feel like we're unable to stand in our power. We feel like we're unable to take the steps to learn the skills that we need to become confident because we've never learned how to be confident. And up until we, wake up, we actually don't realize that we've never been taught the skills that we need to be taught. So I think, and I'm just going to end it here by saying confidence is much more about an unlearning than it is to do with a learning, at least at first.
Yeah, I love that. I 100% believe that. And I speak about that particular point in my program because I believe that, like you, we kind of pick up as we go through life. And sometimes you get to a point where you're like, do you know what? I actually need to release now rather than, pick up more things, more beliefs, more, things that are not mine. I love that.
Yeah. I think that as well as one of the first things that we do inside of the confidence formula is understand that, like, again, it's not your fault that you're not confident. You've picked up so much from the people in your life, your caregivers, your teachers, your coaches, your friends, your employers, you pick up information from everybody around you, and you've kind of molded this version of yourself. And the reason that we don't trust ourselves and we're not confident in ourselves is because we don't really know ourselves. And that comes back to like the definition that I use of self-confidence, which is to recognize that confidence, when you have confidence in somebody, it means you trust them, right? You don't have confidence in a politician that you don't trust. You don't have confidence in a friend that you don't trust, right? But when you get to know them, you start to develop that trust and you work on trusting them. So in order to become self-confident, you actually have to know yourself. And like you said, like know what's not yours before you figure out what is.
Yeah, and I think as well, you know, trusting yourself. I think we spoke about this in a past episode a couple of weeks ago. But I think sometimes being able to trust yourself is as simple as, you know, if you say you're going to do something, get on and do it. If you promise yourself something, do it, and eventually you will build your own self-trust, and you know that if I say this, that's what I mean, and I know myself and I know what I'm going to do. Yeah, I love that so much. I love it so much.
You actually just reminded me of something that Ree said, one of our guests, a few episodes ago, and I loved how she said it, so I'm just going to repeat it. Thank you, Ree, for the wisdom. Word is law. And it was so simple and eloquent. And it's like, if you say you are going to do something, do it. Because if you say something that you're going to do and you don't do it, you're teaching yourself that you can't be trusted, right? Just like if a friend offered to do something for you and then pulls back their offer, right? We might not be able to trust them the next time we ask them to do something. So you need to do what it is you say that you're going to do. And word is law. I love that so much. Thanks, Ree.
100%. 100%. So what you're actually talking about then, just to kind of give it a word or a term or a label, because we love to label things as humans, don't we? What you're talking about when you say that we blindly follow between years 0 to 7 and we kind of copy and emulate other people between the ages of 8 to 13, what you're saying is basically describing conditioning, isn't it?
Exactly. Childhood conditioning.
Yeah, for sure. And I think when I first learned the word conditioning, I was a bit like, what is that? And the way that I've kind of come to understand it is very much like training. You know, if you're trained in a certain field, you are, to a degree, you're conditioned. You know, some people talk about conditioning leather, making it more supple and making it, you know, softer and smoother. And, you know, when you think about training in a job or a career or a field, that for me is kind of what conditioning is, because, you know, between ages 0 to 7, you know, you're developing and sometimes you don't know any better because you're just so young. And this kind of goes back to your point about it not being your fault. You're too young to know any better, and you learn and you're trained and your mind is more open to being conditioned, isn't it?
100%. You're making me think of like a random example, but like let's say you were training for a new job and the person that was training you trained you how to do it wrong.
Yeah.
And that's not how you actually do your job. And it's like and like I said before, you have to like unlearn how to do it that way before you learn the new way to do it. And, you know, so your example of training was really accurate, actually. And so what's actually happening, and I'll get a minute of neuroscience, is that as we learn things, we develop neurological pathways in the brain. That's basically like circuits of neurons that are kind of like highway systems. Let's think of it as like a highway system that's happening in your brain that's kind of like mapping out what you've learned and what you know. And the more often you experience a training, right, the more ingrained that thing is going to be in your head. And so I kind of like to think of it like a riverbed. And I'm going highway now, I'm going riverbed. But it's like the more that the water flows through the riverbed, the more ingrained the river becomes, right?
And the smoother the bed is, and the, you know, the water kind of isn't so jagged on the roads. It's a bit more like, you know, smooth. Yeah, totally.
Exactly. So all of our training, all of our thoughts, all of our beliefs kind of get like more deeply ingrained into these like bigger riverbeds. And then, you know, one day we're just like, but is this the way that I want to be thinking? Is this the way that I want to be behaving? Is this the way that I want to be feeling? And for some of us, it's like, actually, no, I think there might be a different option for life. And so I always say to my clients, like, take out a shovel, maybe some dynamite, and go to the side of the riverbed and let's start like digging out the new riverbed. And this is the thing with change, and change is possible. And this is like, I'm talking about riverbeds and water when it really is what's happening inside of your brain. It's called myelination, is actually when you change the neurological pathways of your brain, the highway systems of your brain. And it just takes repetition because you've been thinking this way for so many years, over and over, and all the evidence you accumulate kind of stays and proves these things to be true. But what's also true about the brain is that we can change the way that our brain thinks. So I say to my clients, take out your shovel, take out your dynamite, go to the side of the river, and now we're starting to create a new neurological pathway. We're starting to create a new riverbed for that water to flow. Yeah. But it's going to take time. It's going to take practice. It's going to take patience. It doesn't just happen overnight. It's not like snap your fingers and you feel different. You think different. You behave differently, right?
Yeah.
And so that's really what it comes down to. So yeah, the training is what's creating the original circuit in your brain. And then we can retrain our brain, which takes time and practice. And that's what, the confidence formula and Restore Yourself really do.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I love how you use a riverbed. I have a similar analogy. I think of it as like driving through a forest. And, if you have like a dirt track and you drive down that dirt track every day, obviously the soil will be compacted, your wheels will be quite smooth and it'll be quite easy to drive. Whereas if you turn off that dirt track and you go straight into the bush and like the trees and the forest, that is going to be really difficult to kind of drive through because you haven't built the kind of steady repetition of wearing the ground down and parting trees and all of that. And I think if you are conditioned, as we all are, to a certain level, and you want to be confident, the unlearning is sometimes really, really hard for that exact reason. It's because you don't have the riverbed, you don't have the path through the trees. You're almost to some degree starting from scratch, and you're shaping a new pathway, And I think sometimes people think, and I don't want to kind of go into too much about habits and behaviors because I know we spoke about that with Reed, but I think sometimes people think that they can just turn on confidence and they can turn it on today, and that will mean that on Friday they'll still have the same level of confidence. And I sometimes think you have to intentionally start again every day. And you have to make it a daily intentional practice, because otherwise, if you don't drive through that forest, what's going to happen? The trees are going to grow, the grass is going to grow, things are just going to kind of close up the road. And when you do try and drive down there, it's going to be even harder. So I think for me, it's the best way. I love your analogy of the riverbed, and it's very similar to my analogy, and it's the best way of having the confidence to keep going when things are hard as well, because this is okay, this is normal, I am forming a whole new pathway. Of course it's going to be hard, and you can almost give yourself that self-compassion. I know we talk about self-compassion all the time, but you can kind of have a chat with yourself and say, it's okay, of course it's hard, definitely, keep going, try again tomorrow, it's going to be okay.
Exactly. I actually love your analogy of the forest. I love the forest just in general, but I really love that because it's like, plowing through bush, which like you can imagine how hard that could be. And I love how you talk about, it's kind of repetition, and that's not to say that like your confidence goes to like, 80 one day and then it's down to 0 another day. And then, you have to get it back to 80. It's like, there's a progression that happens when you learn specific tools and skills, again, which both our programs talk about. But when you learn specific tools and skills and mindset shifts, you put yourself on a trajectory to increase the amount of confidence you have, kind of like in your confidence reserve, in your bucket.
In your toolkit, for sure.
So that you can continue to learn the skills to kind of create that path for yourself in the forest. And I think that's what's really important. And we're not taught this. So like, it's not your fault. And I really just want to highlight that and say that here. It's like, it's not your fault that you don't feel confident because you weren't taught how to be confident. It'd be amazing if this stuff was taught in schools, and maybe one day Davina and I will take them to schools. But, until then, it's like, this is not your fault. You weren't taught how to be confident. In fact, you were more often taught how to not trust yourself. And so we have to do a little bit of unlearning and relearning.
Yeah, and I always say it, I think part of growing up is the unlearning, and it is difficult, but I also feel like the more you do it, the more confidence you get. It's almost like you have to take action to be confident. You can't read and not implement. You can't, watch videos and not do it. And I think it all comes from, driving through the forest. The minute you turn off the well-beaten path and you go into the forest and you do that 10, 20 times, you get to the point where you're like, okay, I have this road and I have this road. I have two roads now. And I feel like that then builds confidence, because then you go, ooh, I could have a third road. What if I turn this way? Okay. And then you go down this way and you do that 10, 20 times and you think, okay, cool. So now I have the original road, I have this road, and I have this road. And I feel like the more you do it, the more confidence you get. But you have to do it to get the confidence, almost like a little cycle.
100%. I talk about that as well. The confidence competence loop. The more competent you get at something like riding a bike, the more confident you become at riding the bike. And then you might become more competent, because then you might learn how to ride with one hand, or, do a wheelie or whatever. But, so they do cycle and impact each other. And you're right. It's all about taking action, which is, what confidence is. It's, learning who you are, what actions you want to take, but then actually taking the actions is where you learn the skills.
Yeah. And I think, I know I keep saying it, but that is a hard part, because you read a book and you can have all the knowledge in your mind, and you think that this book is amazing, I've learned so much, it's so good. But if you don't take action, have you actually read the book?
You've read it, but you haven't integrated it, I would say.
In my brain, I'm a bit like, have you even read it if you haven't done it? Because surely it all comes with action. Isn't there that experiment about the cows? I can't quite remember all the details. But it's in my mind, it's the same as that, where it's like, is the cat in the box? Is it not in the box? If you've read a book, you have done nothing with that knowledge, can you say that you have the knowledge? And I know it's a rabbit hole, but I go down, I'm like, you have to, if something is so important to you and you don't think it, can't do it enough.
No, definitely not. Knowing what you need to do and actually doing what you need to do is completely different. It's like doing your driving test on paper and then getting in a car.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah,
like you got the knowledge of the street signs and the rules of the road, but do you know how to drive a car? Absolutely not. You won't get comfortable and confident driving a car until you're in the car.
Yeah, totally. I love that you've used the driving analogy, because it's perfect. It's like the perfect thing. Like, I've read the high road, and I get in a car, I wouldn't trust myself.
Yeah. And
If I didn't have practical experience.
And that's something that's actually really important, at least for the clients that I work with, because you just graduated university and you're maybe in your first job or second job, really early on. And you come out with a lot of personal pressure, I think, and feelings of expectation for yourself to, have retained all the stuff you learned in university and be able to like regurgitate it and use it in your working world. And the reality is, just because you've read the book and passed the test, you have no idea how to do the job you've been hired to do. And so you really need to come in with a curious mind, asking lots of questions, let someone train you, and not be so hard on yourself that like you don't know everything about this brand new thing you've never done before. Because again, you read the manual, wrote the driving test, but that doesn't mean when you sit in the car for the first time, you can actually move the steering wheel and shift gears and take the car on a ride.
That
right?
is so true. And I think, to kind of talk about that with a real, like a real example, I hope you don't mind this, but, you and I both signed up for that we were doing journey this year. And we did the program together. We learned what we needed to learn, did the kind of head knowledge, we did some practical. And I actually sent you a message last week asking you something that we learned. Have I got learn how to stop, you practice stopping, and then you kind of, you're learning, and then something else will come up, is a light bulb. That means, let me find out. So I think, with all of these processes, and I know we say in Zode, we're not perfect at being confident all the time. We're guides by your side, but we also go through that process of head knowledge and then practical knowledge, and then as we still have the learning kind of, turning off the road into the forest, thinking, oh, I've never done this before, but let's give it a go, asking for help, and repetition. So we're not teaching anything that we're not doing, and that example is literally from last week.
Yeah, I love that. And what I want to just highlight from what you just said is asking for help. Because I know, and I don't know how you feel, but without this program that we were both in, I could never have done what I did in the last 12 months, and that's creating the confidence formula. So I tried for 2-3 years before that to create a program that would help people become more confident, young adults specifically become more confident. But it wasn't until I learned what I didn't know, had the mentorship and the coaching and the formula that we went through, that I was able to actually put my idea or my thoughts into a program that can help so many people. So I think asking for help when you need it is so important. That's one thing that, my own experience in therapy and my own experience as a client and for coaches is like, when you don't know something, ask. Someone else has been there. You're not the first person to walk this road. If you want to learn how to be confident, like, find a mentor. If you want to learn how to create an online program, like, find a mentor. You don't have to create what's it called? You don't have to
like reinvent the wheel.
Reinvent the wheel. Exactly. Someone's done it, right? So just ask for help and just like streamline the process. Get there quicker, get there faster.
Totally. And last week we talked about clarity, and I feel like this kind of leads on very nicely from that, because the first thing that you and I had to get to, the step that we had to get to before we kind of joined the program, was clarity. What is it that you want? What are you trying to achieve? And then we went through the program, and this is like the part of learning. And we've spoken, so many of our episodes kind of all linked together, the beginner's mind, imposter syndrome. A lot of the things that we're talking about, we have real life examples. And I think conditioning is the thing that maybe you didn't know you had. And I know at the very beginning you said that it's not your fault, and it really isn't, because if you don't know that you have something, how can you get to a place of clarity? How can you get to a place of change? So I think I learned about conditioning, I don't know, it definitely wasn't that long ago. I would say maybe 5-6 years ago, and I was a bit like, what is that? So I feel like it's sometimes, the hidden thing that maybe we forget about. And I don't want to go into like underlying beliefs and everything. That might be for another episode. But conditioning plays a huge part in how we operate, and the paths and the riverbeds that we just continually travel down without sometimes even knowing why we're doing it.
Love it. This has been so much fun.
I know, I love it. I could go on and on and on, as always, but it has been so much fun. I love this topic, and I think this is probably one that we could do like a part 2 on. But we will definitely be back in 2 weeks' time, and it's been so great chatting with you. For more information on who we are, what we do, and our love of all things confidence and self-development, you can find or follow us from our social media information, which will be posted below in the comments. And if you've liked what you've heard, please feel free to share, subscribe, or like, and we will see you in 2 weeks' time.
See you soon. Bye.